Welcome to Portrait of an Editor. I am Francis Lombard. I took the podcast on the road to New York Comic Con this month, and it gave me the chance to catch up with previous guests on the podcast to see what they were doing at the con and beyond. First up is IDW's senior editor, Heather Antos. Heads up, there's a couple F-bombs in this one. Enjoy. So Heather, thank you for taking the time out. I was at your panel.
Oh,
for
thank
Star
you.
Trek. I haven't read a Star Trek book, a comic, in ages.
This interview is done then.
Yeah, I know. But the last time I think it was either the license was at DC, I think, or Marvel. So yeah, I'm old. So I have to say, I've been hearing great things about year 5 or. Yeah. And I'm going, maybe I should try to get the trade, try to find out, dive into it, because it sounds like, to be honest, licensed stuff, especially those Star Treks, weren't the greatest. They seem to be, ghettoized in a way, because they didn't, John Byrne on Indiana Jones for 3 issues, and that seemed to be the only A-lister I ever remember seeing on these. But the care and just where you're allowed to go is impressive. And you just started at IDW.
Yeah.
And you're senior editor on
yes.
for the Star Trek thing. So how do you just get ramped up for something that is a new universe? I know you were on Star Wars way back when.
Yeah.
But how do you come in from, say, Valiant universe and then come in and I learned the Star Trek universe where anything goes, it seems, from the panel, especially with the 2 announcements you just had. How do you get to that mind frame as an editor?
Yeah, it helps that I'm a nerd, right? Like that helps that I'm not a stranger to Star Trek. I grew up watching TNG. I'm a huge fan of, all the new shows. So that definitely helps. But I think the biggest thing for me as an editor has always been, well, if I'm not excited about it, then why the fuck is anyone else going to be excited about it? If I'm not excited about my book, then how is the marketing team going to be excited about it? How's the sales team going to be excited about it? How are the fans going to be excited about it? And if it's something that I personally, because as an editor, sometimes you're given books that you don't want to do. That's just, it's the job. Our job is to make books, and sometimes licensors were like, no, we want you to do the book about the whatever, the rock on the planet that no one's ever been to, and who wants to tell that story?
Tribble homeworld or something.
Right, who knows? And so then it's a challenge for me. Well, then I'm going to make this the best damn, book about a rock that has ever been. And I'm going to be so stoked about it, and everyone's going to be so stoked about it, and I'm going to figure out a way to make this awesome. And that's how I always view it for myself, is how do I make this a book that I'm going to be excited about? And that's how I came with Star Trek. With Star Trek, I knew the line had been for a while, had a very loyal fan base that, are huge hardcore Trekkies, and they come in and buy everything, but it seemed to be rather impenetrable to
somebody like me, or
someone who isn't as hardcore of a fan, or who only has casually seen the movies, or an episode here or there. When I pitched the new ongoing series with Jackson and Colin, I asked them, I was like, what does the Avengers look like in Star Trek? What does that team look like? You pull from every era, and this is the most badass crew that Starfleet has ever had. That way, I don't have to have seen a specific show. I can just come in and read Star Trek.
Yeah, but is one thing you say, we all have we've all watched this stuff, but as an editor, the nuts and bolts. You have to dig deeper to be able to, this is an ongoing series, so how do you keep that passion going? Yeah. How do you where do you look as an editor of I need to break down things, I need to either talk with the company because you are dealing with that extra layer of a licensor, but as a professional, you have your fan experience and just personal experience with these, which is a lifetime. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. But there's more to it.
There is. It comes. That's where you really look into how do you build a publishing line, right?
Yeah.
And for this, it's okay, I want to have the flagship. This is the main book that is the anchor of the line. We just announced Defiant today, which is the sister series to the ongoing. So those are our staples, and every line needs its staple. This is the book. If I'm only going to read one Star Trek book, right, what am I going to read?
Yep.
Star Trek, right? Like, done, easy, pretty simple. Which this line has never had before. And, then it comes into, okay, well, I want something that's going to be for fans who like the dark, edgy stuff. I want, what does that look like? Okay, that's Defiant. I want something for fans that like the zany, goofy comedies, obviously Lower Decks. Strange New Worlds was very popular recently. Great, let's figure out a way. Deep Space Nine's 30th anniversary is next year. Maybe we'll be doing something with that. It's trying to see the forest to the trees a lot of the time, and making sure that there is truly a Trek book for everyone and the different tastes out there. Because if all we did, if the only book we published all the time always was, like, say, a Mirrorverse book, well, that's only catering to a very niche, very specific group of Trek fans, and I'm sure they would appreciate it, but not everyone wants sleeveless Picard all the time, always.
Yeah. Is there a big whiteboard with all these? Because there's what? Yeah, you just announced Star Trek, which with...
I have a spreadsheet.
Yeah, you have a spreadsheet. But I'm just trying to, I guess, nuts and bolts or inside baseball of, like, how does an editor, you're coming onto this, of course, but the mechanics in your room of, like, and then you have to educate your talent too, who are coming on, who also probably all have that too. And there's a lot of that.
99% of editing is casting. Really, it comes down to casting the right people. And for me, I know that I like Star Trek. I really, really enjoy it. I'm not the hardcore, nerd when it comes to Star Trek. I know I'm not. I'm not going to be that, and that's not my job to be that. My job is to tell a good story and make a great comic. Star Trek, the licensor, their job is to know everything about all the Star Trek. So for me, who do I know that loves Star Trek more than anyone else is Jackson Collin, and they know how to write a damn good comic. So they come in, and as the hardcore Star Trek fans, and they're going to pitch the most badass, nerdy Star Trek story that all the fans are going to want. And then that's where my job is, like, great, this is awesome. Now, this is how I make it so someone who isn't neck deep in Star Trek lore will also enjoy it. And that's the balance. And that's why I think, like, and having Jamie Rich, who's my executive editor on all the licensed stuff, who, like, knows nothing about Star Trek, is great. Because he can read this and he'll be like, I enjoy it and I like it. And so to have someone, the hardcore fans, the kind of middle fan that is me, and then Jamie, and then the people at Trek, like, every level of Trek nerddom, right, from most to least, is like, this is fucking rad. And that's how you want that balance in there. You want to make sure that, it's a story that everyone can follow. And that comes, again, with getting people who are passionate about the fandom and having people who are also passionate about just making great comics.
Yeah, as they say, I've heard on this show so many times, if anybody listens, is that editors are first-time readers, and it sounds like you have a number of different first-time readers for a licensed product.
Yeah.
Because of what, IDW just celebrated the 400th issue of Star Trek, which no other licensor has been able to accomplish. So and as you were saying, there's a number of different types of fans, and you're trying to bring in other fans too. So you're a first reader for the project, and you're with Jamie Rich too. So that's great. That's awesome. Now, as a senior editor, what other editors are working with you, and how does it sort of, what you just described, sort of just expand underneath, or how does that work too?
Yeah, so I have an editorial assistant who works under me. Her name is Vanessa Real. She's amazing, and I love her, and keeps me sane. Because as I'm working on more and more books, it helps to have someone else kind of help maintain the day-to-day, and making sure the ink pages, once approved, gets to the colorist, and she helps me prioritize, like, this is the book that you need to read now, because I am working on not just all the Star Trek books that you've heard, but a whole bunch of ones that haven't been announced. Yeah. So I have her underneath me, and then also as a senior editor, part of what comes in that is kind of being that first reader for the other licenses. as well, because it helps to have someone who, I'm not like Turtles, right? I'm not working on Turtles day to day. But I read the issues before they go to print, to kind of have a, like, okay, here's the one last gut check to make sure that, you know, I'm not fully swamped within the turtle lore. To come in and be like, hey guys, there's this balloon that just like doesn't have a tail, you know, because I haven't looked at the pages, you know, for hours at a time. So so there's a lot of stuff that getting into the nitty gritty of publishing hierarchy, but like, you know, it's overseeing and being that first reader for other licenses. It's working on a lot of like process documentation and training younger editors, and you know, being part of pitch committees and things like that, and also, you know, bringing in new licenses and what those conversations can look like. It's I mean, like any job, you know, the higher up, the more businessy I think it gets. But you know, being creative is always going to be my passion, my drive. It's where I want to be.
Has it switched now as a senior editor and coming over to IDW? Has it sort of moved away? Like
it hasn't moved away.
But
my day-to-day is still making comics.
Okay.
But like I have to deal with P&Ls now, which like I don't want to deal with numbers. I didn't get into comic books to deal with numbers.
How do you get in the mind frame to deal with something like that? Because everybody, you know, we're all adults.
Yeah.
And there's things that we have to do that we don't like doing.
Yeah.
But I was like, do you just ask the questions? Do you just ask questions and then as you learn from those answers?
Yeah.
I
mean, anyone who knows me knows I'm not afraid to open my mouth. And so, like, when it came to do my first P&L and learn that stuff, it was truly like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't want to do it wrong, and I don't want to mess this up for anyone else. Show me how to do this, cool, and then we'll figure it out, you know. The nice thing at the end of the day is it's not rocket science. No one's dying from, you know, any of this. It's comics, so there's that pressure on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's and for me, you know, getting the boring stuff done, as I like to say, as soon as I can, makes it so I can do the fun stuff quicker.
Mm-hmm. Now, how many books are there? You just announced 2 to 1.
Yeah.
The Star Trek line's expanding.
Yeah.
So, on your day, you're balancing how many as?
Okay.
You're overseeing Star Trek. You're connected to Turtles. And I'm trying to run. And I know IDW's launching.
Okay, so of the books that are announced, hold on. Star Trek Defiant, which we announced today. Lower Decks, Picard, Strange New Worlds. And then a bunch of things I can't talk about. So I'm doing, just at IDW alone, I'm probably overseeing, plus taking account my IDW originals.
Yeah.
I'm like 12 to 15 books at a time. So
is that compared to as you've progressed as an editor? Is that probably the biggest workload you've had?
I mean, if you take into account all the freelance I do as well, because I do a bunch, the image stuff I do, everything, I definitely am doing more than I ever have on that regard. But I mean, at Marvel put out 80 books a month, there were weeks at Marvel where I was sending 12 books to print a week. So IDW is definitely not at that workload. I'm very thankful for it. But it is the most I've ever personally been responsible for. As these are my books. I'm not assisting. These are my books. I love it.
Yeah, because when we first talked, we talked about you were doing a lot of freelance work, and how do you track all those too? Because you have about 6 out there, and I know you're working. So do you track them separately? I just was wondering about the mechanics of it. Do you have it in your office, or is it something you have to keep separate?
I work from home, so it's all in the same office.
There you go.
But it's
easy.
It's all systems, right? It all comes down to editing a comic book is editing a comic book. Whether there's different rules of keeper of the keys, as it were, whether if it's licensed or creator owned, right? Who has final say? But at the end of the day, making a good story is making a good story. Making a good comic is making a good comic. And for me, I was just actually talking about this yesterday with someone else on the show floor. I have the same editorial system, the way I structure my week, my day, as I did when I first started. When I first started, I did this big anthology.
When you first did the anthology?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where I was overseeing 50 different creators on 17 stories, in this one big book, and I had a system where, on every Sunday, then it's Mondays now, but I check in with literally every single team, and just do it like, hey, I know nothing's due this week, but how was your weekend, blah, 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 or like, this is going to print, this is what I need, blah, blah, blah. I just check in with every single team because that's my touch point where, okay, I know where everything on every single project is at, so I've touched base, and then at that point it's just priorities. What's going to print this week? What covers do I need in? Who do I need to chase? But I know I've at least touched points on every single project.
And how to prioritize your week.
And how to prioritize my week, exactly, from then on out.
So you were saying, going back to when you first started, it was a crime anthology.
Yes.
And when we were talking first, you loved crime. So is that going to sort of start appearing in either Star Trek or original stuff? IDW original, your love of crime? Because
always.
Okay.
Always,
my last question is, so there's a possibility
always,
of...
Always. I have I want to do a Starfleet Internal Affairs book really bad.
Oh, wow.
So I've also been pitching Star Trek Scooby-Doo. So, I'm trying to get it. My love of crime will always prevail, and it will make Star Trek.
Can you see a connection? Is it because of crime, which is about normal people making mistakes?
Yeah.
Pretty much. I don't know if that's what I sort of see it as that way of in desperate times or something. That connecting with a utopian, universe like Star Trek, where all the basic things have sort of been figured out, but there's still more things. Is that would work? That can work?
I think so. Actually, come to think of it, Trill, which is a one-shot about the Trill species, alien one-shot by Jody Hauser, done by Rick Russiata and Rafael Granados, that comes out next month. Actually kind of is a bit of a murder mystery, crime story. So, for me, crime has always been interesting because it's what is a crime to you might not be a crime to me. It can be a very personal thing, whether it's a personal betrayal, whether it's literally breaking the law, right? And what is a crime in the United States is not a crime in other countries, right? There's very varying degrees. And so the Federation might have their set of rules, but as we all know, the Romulans have theirs. And there's a lot of space in between to explore that, and all the various different cultures and things. So I think there's definitely a lot of room.
Now the way you put it, yes.
To play with that in the Star Trek universe.
Well, Heather, thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I'll have to catch up some other time about more Star Trek once Star Trek comes out, and then Defiant I'm looking forward to. That was a surprise. Awesome. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.